Chevre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Today is Beis Cheshvan, the second day in the month of Cheshvan. Erev Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Noach. We will, Mr. Hashem, discuss a thought for the week and connect it to the calendar date. First, we'll start with the pasuk, and it could be it's a prayer also. It's a pasuk in Yeshaya. We say this pasuk also in the Haftarah of a fast day, the Haftarah of Dirshu Havaya B'Motzei. It's a pasuk in Yeshaya, and the pasuk says, Ki v'simcha seitzeyu uv'shalom tuvalun hehorim v'hagvois yivtzchu l'fneichem rino v'chol atzei hasodeh imchauchov, which is translated, for in gladness shall you go out, and in peace shall you arrive. The mountains and hills will break out in glad song before you, and all the trees of the field will clap hands. So this is a verse that talks about when Mashiach will come, and ki v'simcha setzeyu, we're going to go out of exile joyously, which could also be interpreted ki v'simcha, through joy, you can go out and break out of any situation, which is like your mini personal exile. And not only that, but the mountains and the trees will welcome you back to Eretz Yisrael with abundant prowess. That's what Rashi says. In this week's Parsha, Parshas Noach, it talks about the Mabul, the flood. And the pasuk says that the land became dry, Yov Sha'aretz, and then the pasuk continues, another pasuk, Vaydaber Elikim al Noach Lemar, go out from the teva, go out from the ark, leave the ark. You and your whole family. So there's a famous sikha of the Rebbe in Chelik Chofhei. We're just going to speak the main point. That sikha is a very special sikha that has to be learnt by every one of us, and it speaks about the beauty and the importance and the supreme importance of having children and building the family unit. See there. I'm not going to elaborate on that too much. I'm just mentioning it because I'm sure the Rebbe would want me to mention this and the importance of this, especially in our day and age today. There's so many hardships and difficulties and halomais v'esterim on the Indian of having many children. In any case, so the Rebbe asks that sikha, shtickle klotz kasha, a very obvious question. From the wording of the pasuk that it says tzei min hateva, it seems that Hashem had to give Noach a separate, special commandment, which is not understood. Once we say that it was dry, once the pasuk says Yav Sha'aretz, that it was dry, so why did Hashem have to tell him go out of the teva? You know, it's like hello. He was cooped up in the ark, and it was pretty. You could argue and say it seems that on one level it wasn't good circumstances whatsoever. It seems like it might be a prison or like a box. And as soon as the land was dry, that means we're back to normal, so to speak, in a certain sense. So did he need to be told to go out of the teva? And we see that it's a command, especially from Rashi on the next pasuk. The pasuk says concerning the animals that were in the teva, kol hachaya she'itcha mikol basar ba'oif v'behema, etc. And the pasuk says that Haitzei, yes? Hayitzei Kri, anyways. So Rashi says that, what do we see from here? Im einam roitzim lotzeis haitziam ata. Which means if they don't want to go out, you have to take them out. So in other words, it's a command. There's a stress over here that he has a specific command. You have to force him to go out of the teva. So just like this was a command, he'd say that he had to do that, so too it's over here when the Eibusha told him, Tzei min hateva, it's a command. So we have to understand why did he need the special command. And the Rebbe explains, and he also, first he mentions a medrash, that I like the medrash, it's a separate lesson, so I'll mention it. He mentions a medrash where it says that Noach said that just like I had to be told to go Rishus, I had Rishus to go into the teva, so too I have to get Rishus to go out of the teva. Which that's just a lesson in life. Sometimes Don't make a move. You had instructions before to go into the teva, so until you get clear instructions to go out of the teva, you don't go out of the teva. But the Rebbe explains that that's not the vort, because if that was the vort, so then Rashi would have brought it down, etc. Anyways, then the Rebbe goes on to explain that even according to the simple pshat, the conditions of the teva were completely miraculous. And then according to Chassidus especially, according to Pnimiyus HaTorah. But first, what's interesting, he brings a raya from the simple meaning of the verse that there were miracles that happened. And where do we see that, for example? We see it already from before the animals went into the ark. And that's previously in the pasuk where it says, Me'a'oif l'mineu, u'men lemina, where it says that from each bird according to its kind, Rashi says, Oison shadofku b'mineim, those that had relations with their own species. V'lo yishchisu darkam, and did not corrupt their ways. What happened when it came to the ark? So, umealeim bo, they came, there was some force, spiritual force, a miraculous force, that was emanating from the ark, umealeim bo, they came by themselves without Noach having to gather them. And v'chol sha'teva keilatoi, any animal which the teva would receive, hichnas ba, Noach brought into the different compartments. In other words, because the question is, how does Noach know which animals were acting in a corrupt manner and not? Noach couldn't know. The Eibishter knows. This vision, this security clearance, call it whatever you want, that was emanating from the teva itself. So that was already a miracle before. In other words, the collection of the animals, even before they went onto the teva, was already a shinui, v'chidush b'maaseh bereishis. It was already a supernatural occurrence. And then afterwards, the Rebbe brings out that in the ark, even though the pasuk says that each animal had their own separate living quarters, etc., but still in the ark itself, as it's obvious, there was a state, there was a preview, a foretaste of Me'ein Olam Haba, Messianic times, similar to what the verse says in Yeshaya when it comes to the vision of Mashiach, V'gor ze'evim keves, v'nomer im gdi. It says the wolf will lie with the sheep, and the leopard will lie with a kid goat. So the same thing over here was going on in the ark. Another total, absolute shinui v'chidush b'maaseh bereishis, a total miracle and divine revelation that these animals, every animal that we have today, starts in the ark. So we had the domestic animals, what in Lashon Kodesh we call behemoths, together with the chayas, with wild animals from the jungle. And not only just chayas, but chayas turfos, predators. And the meaning of a predator is that they don't kill only to eat. They kill because they enjoy this feeling of the animals that's weaker. They prey upon those that are weaker, and they enjoy the kill for the kill. And they were also in the ark, and their natures changed. And that's what it means, that when Mashiach will come, there will be this state of peace, that predator will now have a different nature and will not need to kill. And the animals felt that also, as the Rebbe explains in the Sikha. So see there. But I want to get back to Adam Rishon. So what was the question? Why didn't he go off the ark by himself? Why should he? It was paradise. It was bliss. It was heaven. It was Gan Eden. It was more than Gan Eden. It was similar to a Gilead of L'asad Lava. And another aspect of the miracle, the Rebbe says, is, how is it possible that a small handful of people could take care of so many animals? If we had every single species, I don't know if you ever went to a zoo. You see, it's pretty humorous when you see 6 humans handling the elephant. So the elephant is 10 times the size of one human. And when you go to the zoo and you see how the zookeepers are handling the elephant, there's 10 people, they're scrubbing it, cleaning the cage, etc., etc. So here what do we see in the Teva? There was a zoo with thousands of species. Domestic animals, jungle animals, and the whole thing is taken care, who's leading them? How many zookeepers do we have? A handful. So that was also a complete miracle. So even though there were other stories in Midrashim, and Rashi also brings it down, it wasn't Mamish Mashiach, because there was still pain, there was still wounds, there were still things that were going on, like the famous story in the Teva. But nevertheless, there was Gilui Elokus, there was in the ark, there was divine revelation, and that divine revelation also permeated the animals, and Noach was having a great time. He loved it so much that he actually didn't want to go out of the ark, and therefore he had to be commanded, Tzei min hateva, go out of the ark. And what the Rebbe explains is why does he have to go out of the ark? Because then he's commanded to multiply, pruvu. That's the first thing that the Eibishter tells him after he tells him that he should go out of the ark. He says, V'sharsu v'aretz u'fara v'rova al haaretz. And then Rashi says over here that kan hitalem tashma shamita. Over here, they were allowed the marital union to have relations. And the whole time when they were in the ark, they were not allowed. So in other words, the purpose, the mission of going out of the ark was to rebuild the world. Because while the Mabul was going on, there was a state of destruction. The world was destroyed. Civilization was destroyed. And now Noach had to rebuild the world, had to rebuild civilization. So then the Rebbe explains in Avodas Hashem what this means. And I think we spoke about this last year, about Boi El Ateva. Even though on one hand we have the lesson of Chassidus, which is so amazing, so awesome, that we come to Parshas Noach right after the whole month of Tishrei, after we finish with the holidays, as we'll elaborate soon, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're hit by a tractor, trailer, truck, that this bliss of being in the Teva. And what does Boi El Teva mean? Like we explained last year. Go into the verse, go into the words of Torah and Tefillah. Because there's a mabel out there. There's a flood, there's a tsunami. Worries, financial concerns, pandemic, whatever it is. And it hits you from all sides. And the only salvation, the only redemption comes out of Boi El Teva. You have to become completely enveloped and surrounded by a shield. And what is that? The words of davening and the words of learning. That's what the Baal Shem Tov said. So now, after we have this lesson of Boi El Teva, go into the ark, guess what? We have another instruction. And that is the whole purpose of going into the ark, into the words of Torah and Tefillah, is ultimately to go out of the ark, to take that inspiration, to take that light, to take that positivity, to take that spiritual energy and bring it into the world and transform the world. Why? Because that's your mission. And really the dynamics touched upon another subject we spoke already many times about Rotzu v'Shuv. Rotzu means to run, Shuv means to return. But run means to yearn and to long back to your spiritual source. We have this balance, this dynamic that has to always be on and happening, this paradox. That on one hand, you're always yearning for your spiritual source, but on the other hand, you have to realize right now, there's a mission, there's a purpose, and your purpose is to do shuv, to go back, to carry through your mission. And this is the same idea over here with the Boi El Teva dynamic, with the Tzei min hateva. On the one hand, you have to recharge your spiritual battery, you have to always be connected to your source, and realize that really you're about being one with the source and being spiritual. But for now, we also have a mission and a greater purpose, and that is what the Master wants, what Hashem wants. What's the real purpose of everything? And that is not only to think about yourself and what's enjoyable for you, even spiritually, but what your mission is. You're a soldier, and you have to do what the Eibishter wants. And the Rebbe mentions this also in the Sikha of Chelik Chafei, that why eventually, when you go out of the ark, even though it seems like it's a descent, but ultimately you reach a higher level. Because in the ark, as it was by Noach, the Rebbe calls it Tainug Boire. That's your pleasure. And therefore, whatever pleasure you reach, even in spirituality, because it's yours, it's limited. But when you go out of the ark and you carry out your mission, your purpose, so then you come ultimately to even a higher level of pleasure, a level of Tainug Boire, Hashem's pleasure, that He receives from you fulfilling your purpose and mission. And then once you do that, you partake and you become part of and united with Hashem's pleasure, which is truly infinite and greater than any spiritual pleasures you would reach on your own. And really, this is, one of my mashpim used to always speak. There's a difference in Giluyim, in Etzem. So Giluyim and Etzem. So in Giluyim, in a revealed way, we're talking about a descent. You have to go out of the ark. But in Etzem, first of all, right now you have to know in Etzem, in essence, going out of the ark is greater. Even though you're losing revelation, it seems like it's a descent. And then ultimately, you'll come to something which even in Giluyim, even in a revealed way, is the highest level. So that's about Seimen HaTeva. Now let's connect it to Beis Cheshvan and Tishrei. In Lubavitch, there's a custom that Mitzvah Simchas Torah, there was an announcement. That's the main time they made this announcement. V'yankiv holech l'darkei. The Gabbai gave a patch, and he made this proclamation. V'yankiv holech l'darkei. And Yaakov went on his way. Together with that comes another saying, that after the month of Tishrei, that from Fananda climbing the Peklach, we have to unpack the suitcases. The meaning of both these sayings is that during Tishrei, we were high, like we spoke previously this month about high holidays. That's also because we're spiritually high. And the month of Tishrei is Merubah b'Moedim, so we're completely surrounded and enveloped in our higher realities, spiritual energies, mamish days of divine revelation. We're swept away by the spirituality of all these holidays. And then, guess what? Reality hits. Back to life, Monday morning back at the office. So, V'yankiv holech l'darkei means now we're talking about Yaakov in contrast to Yisrael. It's a lower element. What's of the Jew? The Yaakov, Yodoy Echezes Barkei Bekiv Esav. He's called Yaakov because his hand is touching the heel of Esav. So we're talking about a Jew that comes into contact with an Esav. And it's a struggle, and it's a threat. And so it's a lower level. A Yisrael sort of Jew, like on Shabbos, he's higher than the world. But no, we're talking about the Jew as he's Monday morning back in his office, on Wilshire Boulevard, in Collins Street, in Fifth Avenue, wherever it is. And he's in this world, and he has to rise above it. But it's a threat. So V'Yaakov, holech l'darkei, we make the announcement that it's going to have to be now Yaakov, but don't worry about it, you will succeed. The Rebbe explains in one of his Maimorim, Tov Shin Lamed Ches, by the way, 1977, when the Rebbe had his heart attack, Shmini Atzeres, so afterwards there was a series of Maimorim and talks, and the central theme of all these talks and Maimorim for like a month and a half was all about this theme of V'Yaakov holech l'darkei. And in one of the discourses, he explained that in the world we sing a niggin, we say a prayer, Al tira avdi Yaakov. Do not fear Yaakov, the subject of Hashem, the servant of Hashem. And the Rebbe explained that even though we Chabad don't say this on Matzah Shabbos, nevertheless, he explained the meaning behind it. Because Matzah Shabbos, we have to go away from the holiness of Shabbos, and we're going back into the world. Therefore, we say this prayer, which tells Yaakov, don't worry, don't be scared. Al tira of the Yaakov. We have to give him this notification because it's warranted. Because now it's after Shabbos, so it's a descent, and we're dealing with Yaakov, not Yisrael. So therefore you should know, nothing can bring you down. You shall overcome. Al tira of the Yaakov. Don't worry, because the Eibush is with you. So similarly over here, after the whole month of Tishrei, we have this announcement of Yaakov holech l'darkei, also with Fananda Klab de Peklach, means to take the different sort of inspirations. From Rosh Hashanah we had Kabbalah Seil, obedience, subservience. From Yom Kippur we learn how to say I'm sorry. Simchas Torah, Sukkos, we learn how to be joyous. So we take the different inspirations with us throughout the whole year, and whenever we need one of those talents, today we're going to pull out a Rosh Hashanah inspiration. Tomorrow we might need something that we took into ourselves in Kippur, and so on and so forth. And we carry it through for the rest of the year. So in those talks, the Rebbe explained how there's different stages of Yaakov holech l'darkei, this announcement. Like, hello, the show is over. So on one level, the first Yaakov holech l'darkei was already Matzah Yom Kippur. Why? Even though there was Sukkos, because some Jews came to the Rebbe, came to Lubavitch for Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Yom Kippur. And then they went home for Sukkot. So in a sense, even going home back to their branch, to their private residence was a bit of a descent compared to what it was in the Yomim Neirayim, the high holidays of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So there was an announcement of Yaakov Ol Chadarka Mitzvah Yom Kippur. Then the next announcement is Mitzvah Simchas Torah. That's the main announcement, because that's when all the holidays, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and Simchas Torah, Sukkot is finished. But then there was another announcement of Mitzvah Shabbos Bereshis, and there's an announcement Mitzvah Pashas Noach. But guess what? The Rebbe says, Beis Cheshvan, my friends, today. What is Beis Cheshvan? The first day we start saying Tachnun. So that means that back to reality. We're saying words are Shamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu. It's an awareness. It's an awareness of my deficiencies. And I'm acknowledging it. I have tendencies. And who knows? It could be, if I'd be honest, it's a bit more than tendencies. Sometimes I failed. And I have to recognize and acknowledge it and confess. So today, Beis Cheshvan is the first time that really the shortcomings and the deficiencies of what can happen to a person who's in Golus, out of the high holidays, and he has to start with the struggle in the trenches and in the mud. And he says, Hashamnu. That's why Yaakov Ol Chadarka, really, when is the first time we go back into the trenches, back into the front lines? Today. Because today is the first time we say, Hashamnu, Bagadnu, Tachnu. Now, by the way, there's another last Yaakov Ol Chadarka, that Zayin Cheshvan, the Rebbe explains, because Zayin Cheshvan is the last day when somebody who went to Yerushalayim for the high holidays, for the Yom Tovim, when he came back home. So that's the last announcement of Yaakov Ol Chadarka. But today, my friends, Beis Cheshvan is a major announcement. And the Rebbe explains in a Sikha and a Yechidus of Aleph Cheshvan Tavshem Memtes, he said the same point. He connected it clearly, explicitly. The Tzeim and Ateva to the Avodah of Yaakov Ol Chadarka. That Teva is like Tishrei. We're in a different world. We're in Gan Eden. It's so amazing. It's so gewaldig. It's so geschmack to have these days that are awesome. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Simchas Torah. That's like we're shielded, we're protected, etc. But then we have to know Tzeim and Ateva. In the end of the day, right now, Mashiach is not yet here. We still have things that we have to do, wherever we are, to be a positive influence. And that's what it means, Tzeim and Ateva. I'd like to finish off with two stories that talk about this, similar. One is a story of Yaakov Shapiro, who was the son of Rabbi Avram Shapiro, who was the chief Ashkenazi rabbi of Eretz Yisrael for like 10 years. He came to the Rebbe a couple of times. So one of the first time he came to the Rebbe, he was in Yechidus for 3 hours, and the Rebbe asked him, how does it feel to be outside of Eretz Yisrael? And Rabbi Avram Shapiro said it was very, very difficult for him. So the Rebbe told him, this is really, you have to remember, similar to what it says by Yaakov, Vayisa Yaakov Raglov Vayelech Arza B'nei Kedem. It says Yaakov lifted his feet and went to the land. And Rashi says, No so liba yes Raglov V'nasa Kal Aleches. And the Rebbe said, true. Once you go outside of Israel, it's a descent. True. But you have to realize that the whole purpose of going outside of Israel is to come to an ascent. Through that, you will come to greater position and level than you were before. Similar to what we spoke before, that in the end, through going into Cheshvan and carrying through Hashem's mission, we come to a higher level. So that's what you have to do. And this is what the Rebbe told the chief rabbi, Ashkenazi chief rabbi, who was having difficulties. And these words encouraged him. Like it says by Yaakov, that once and Rashi says, Mishnis Basab Suda Teva, Shahuftach B'Shmirah. Once he was told good tidings that the Eibishter will take care of him, because the Parsha Vayetzi starts that Vayetzi Yaakov Be'Shova Yelacharana, he fell asleep, he had a vision, and Hashem revealed himself and told him he guaranteed his safety and his success, etc. And the Rebbe went on to say that even though it was a Yerida, still, what makes Yaakov unique? Even in a certain sense, greater than Avraham and Yitzchak. That from Yaakov came the Yud Beis Shvatim. And where were all the Yud Beis Shvatim born? Outside of Eretz Yisrael. So on the one hand, there was a Yerid, there was a descent. And you have to know that you have to go with the right approach. It has to be in a way that Nasa Liba Yas Raglov. The good feelings that you have to permeate your totality, your entire body. That you felt goodness, Basim B'Suda Teva permeates your entire body, that it became easy for you to walk. Nasa Kal, Leleches. Now the same thing's over here. This is what the Rebbe told this chief rabbi, that even though he's going out of Eretz Yisrael, but through that will come to even a higher level. And there's another story. This happened with Mr. Mendel, Mendel Greenbaum, in 1951. He was an American boy and he fought in the Korean War in the United States Army. You have to watch the video, the way he describes the letter of the Rebbe, that the Rebbe wrote to him. It's unbelievable. But anyways, he went into Yechidus before he got this letter, which I'm not going to elaborate now. He went into Yechidus and he told the Rebbe, look, I'm going to the army now, and Yiddishkeit is going to be far from me. It's going to be very difficult for me, Torah, mitzvahs and things in such an environment, in such an atmosphere. So the Rebbe told him, and these are the words the Rebbe told him, sometimes in life, you have to go back in order to go forward in the future. And in order for Mendel to understand it better, the Rebbe stood up from behind his desk and he put his chair in front of him and he told Reb Mendel, if I want to jump over this chair, I can't. But if I go back, if I take a few steps back and I run a bit, then I could jump over the chair. So Reb Mendel was saying that the Rebbe had to physically show him, like stand up and tell him that sometimes we go back, we have a yerida, we have a descent, but in order to come to a higher level, to accomplish, to achieve something greater than we wouldn't have been able to achieve any other way. So this is the lesson for Tzei Min HaTeva. And this is the lesson of Yaakov Holach L'Darka, hit the road. This, we have a mission over there. We have to go out and elevate the world. We have to always remember the balance of Boi El HaTeva. We carry with us the inspiration and the fiery enthusiasm and the intense inspiration of whatever we took during Tishrei, always with us. But we also have to go out of the Teva, Tzei Min HaTeva, and bring it out into the world and elevate the world to make the world a better place. And this is how we could say, the Rebbe, by every single Farbrengen, many Farbrengens would end off, Ki v'simcha seitzeyo v'sholem tuvalon. We should all be matzliach in the Aveda v'yankiv holach l'darkei, and Ki v'simcha seitzeyo v'sholem tuvalon, begula mitzvah shlema, take it from a yad mamish. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisborich, your man in Melbourne.